Hello, everyone, and welcome to the People in Housing podcast. I'm Tom, Near People Social Value Officer. Bit of a change in format today. I'll be the guiding voice. Instead of the typical one speaker, we do have four. So I'm here to kind of give you a bit of background on it. Starting with Robert Heath, we'll be speaking with Ian on his hope to support clients in the housing sector with the transition to net zero, as well as discussing their innovation on heat pumps and how this technology can support tenants in order to bring about energy efficiency and prevent fuel poverty.
I think I just want to start off by saying good morning and thank you for joining us at the People in Housing podcast, Ian. It's lovely to have you here. Could you just give us a bit more background about what you do at Robert Heath and how you affect the industry?
Yes, of course. So I joined Robert Heath about 6 months ago as part of the Daikin acquisition. My responsibilities are strategy and partnerships. So I'm effectively looking at what we need to do to shape the business moving forward to support our clients on the transition to net zero, as well as supporting our clients to identify opportunities through funding and through technology to achieve their ambitions for net zero. Not just reducing carbon emissions, but also helping fight fuel poverty and improving comfort at the same time.
And what have you found that's one of the most important things while seeing what is going to help fight fuel poverty within the social housing industry at the moment?
I think key is education. It's absolutely useless finding the best technology and the best solution to retrofit a property if you're not having effective conversations with residents and giving some good quality advice, and making sure they understand what you're doing, they're involved in the process, but they also understand how to interact with the new technology and how to get the most from it, including things like looking at their energy tariff and making sure they're on the right tariff for them. And if you can achieve that and they interact with the retrofit effectively, they can make significant savings. But key for me is always advice and conversations.
Yeah, definitely. I think I would 100% agree with that. So how do you at Robert Heath work with the social housing sector, and what are you supporting with them other than the whole retrofitting and educational side of things at the moment?
Certainly. So we're established in 1979, so we've been in the sector quite some time. We're a specialist M&E contractor, so we specialise in heating, all fossil fuels and renewables, solar PV and electrical services. So we're a traditional maintenance installation contractor, but we pride ourselves in the fact we can offer excellent service and skills for the traditional fuel types, but we can also work with the client and transition with them through to net zero carbon.
Okay, perfect. And what positive benefits do you think your product can bring to the tenants that inhabit the homes with the product fitted?
There's several. So when you effectively retrofit a home, we always talk about net zero as if it's all about carbon emissions, and it's really important to reduce people's carbon emissions.
Yeah.
But we also need to pay particular attention to energy cost and make sure it's affordable and lifting people out of fuel poverty. But at the same time, we also need to look at comfort. So, for example, you could have a customer where they've got individual electric heaters in the property, and you bring in a centralised heat pump solution. That may not necessarily have a massive impact on their energy bill. And that may seem strange to say, but if they can only afford to heat one room and you can give them a solution for a similar cost that can make the whole house a home, and they can afford to heat the entire home, that can significantly increase their comfort, but may not necessarily have a direct impact on their energy bill. In addition to that, people talk about upskilling gas engineers and moving gas engineers into renewables, and that is part of the strategy. But the reality is we're going to have gas boilers for many years to come, and we still need that skill set within the workforce. So this is also about a just transition to net zero carbon. But through doing large scale retrofits, we'll create quality jobs at the same time. So there's more than one way to lift people out of fuel poverty. We can reduce their energy bills and make their homes more affordable to run, but we can also provide quality career paths and training to help people secure good quality jobs, enjoyable jobs with a good career path.
Okay, perfect. And I think probably one of my questions is probably have as much knowledge as some of our viewers out there. I mean, what is the initial costing for heat pumps to the social housing organisations? to what they've currently got within the tenants' homes at the moment?
It's more expensive. It's the elephant in the room. A lot of people say heat pumps are more expensive, but the challenge is we're not comparing apples and apples.
Yeah.
So we've replaced gas boilers for years, and that's effectively a boiler swap. When a boiler's swapped, nobody really looks at the sizing of the radiators, the sizing of the pipework. So a lot of condensing boilers, I'd be quite confident to say, probably aren't condensing in their homes today, because they're not on a system that's optimised for them. Whereas when we install a heat pump to MCS standards, we're doing a full room by room heat loss calculation, we're checking pipe sizing, we're checking radiator sizing, and we're looking at the hot water solution. So effectively what we're comparing is swapping a boiler to installing removing an old system and installing a brand new heating system with that renewable technology. So when you come to heat pump 2, you won't need the new cylinder, the radiators will be correctly sized, the power supplies will already be there, so will the base to support the heat pump.
Yeah.
So it would be fairer to compare the price of a gas boiler to the second heat pump they're going to install into their home.
Okay.
But for the first heat pump, yes, it is considerably more expensive than a gas boiler because there's a lot more work to do to get a heat pump ready in the first place.
So if I'm right in saying the heat pump is more sustainable in the long run than the traditional boiler?
Absolutely. And the reason it's more sustainable is gas, you're burning something. If you're burning something, you're emitting carbon emissions along with other things into the environment. Yeah. With electricity, it's fair to say we still burn gas to create electricity, but the energy company is doing a great deal of work in the background to introduce more and more renewables into the grid, reducing the carbon impact of the grid.
Yeah.
By using a product that uses electricity, you're already using a cleaner fuel source. And there's also zero emissions at point of use. So if you're trying to improve the air quality within an area, a heat pump is not emitting any emissions in that local area. So in addition to that, a heat pump is high efficiency. So typically we'd look at a heat pump to have a coefficient performance around 3.5, which means it's 350% efficient. So for every kilowatt of electricity you use, you get 3.5 kilowatts of heat out of the unit. Meaning we're using a lot less energy going into the unit than you're getting coming out. In comparison, a gas boiler, assuming it is actually condensing, is around 90% efficient.
Okay. Yeah, because I was going to ask that, because I don't think many people would know the efficiency of a boiler. I think it's just if it's actually heating your home. But and I assume, obviously, your heat pumps, they come out with other technologies as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's best to look at a whole solution for home rather than focusing on individual technology. So heat pumps can work with other advanced technologies, such as we have a strategic partnership with Mixergy, who I know they'll talk to you later about their products, and things like solar, for example. So you could, if you put solar onto a property or a mini wind turbine, you can generate some of that energy the unit needs to operate, further reducing energy bills and taking that demand from the grid. In addition to that, it's when you look at a home, we are advocates of fabric first. So reducing the amount of energy a property needs in the first place before installing a new heating solution. So though it doesn't directly interact with insulation and fabric materials, it is reliant on them for the sizing of the unit. So there is a direct relationship there. Yeah,
and I think I'm just saying as well, something I've noticed recently is solar energy is becoming more and more obviously normal in the industry now, and especially on the everyday home. And as much as net zero is obviously so big in the industry at the moment. I think one of the main things that I'd like to ask for myself, as well as probably some of the viewers out there, is what actually is a heat pump?
So a heat pump, the best way to describe it is it's a unit that captures energy. It can capture that energy from the air, water or ground, and then it uses electricity to further increase that temperature. So if you look at an air source, which is the most common type of heat pump in the UK, it basically blows air across a heat exchanger and captures heat from that air. It uses a refrigerant, which think of refrigerant as just a really high efficiency heat transfer fluid, and it has a very, very low boiling temperature in the negative. That air can make enough of a difference to start to bring that refrigerant up to the boil and beyond. We then compress that refrigerant to further increase the temperature, and that heat is then put into the property. The refrigerant is allowed to expand to go back to normal state, and the cycle continues. The best way to think about it is, you pump up a bike tyre, the end of the pump gets hot.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty much what a heat pump does.
Okay.
But the power input is to run the compressor and the fan. So a lot of the energy you're getting is actually from the atmosphere. So you're capturing that energy from the air.
Okay.
And if you flip it in the other way around and run the circuit the other way around, it will cool rather than heat. So effectively, its job is to shift energy, heat energy, from where you don't want it to where you do.
Oh, okay, perfect. So what would you say some of the main perks, if you may, of a heat pump, other than being sustainable? What would you say it helps as well as fuel poverty?
So they're more consistent. So a heat pump is designed to maintain a constant temperature. So from that point of view, you often hear people where they can run their home 1 or 2 degrees cooler, because they don't have the peaks and troughs that you sometimes get with traditional boiler setup, where they try and heat up really, really quickly, overshoot a little bit, and then come down. You don't get a very even temperature with that approach to heating, whereas heat pumps are a lot more consistent. They can also interact with energy tariffs. So because it's electricity, you can store electricity, and electricity, the rates vary, whereas your gas rate remains constant throughout day and night. Electricity, there are multiple variable tariffs out there. If you pair it with the right tariff, you could choose, for example, to store your hot water at a time when energy is its cheapest, and the heat pump could also choose to interact with an energy tariff. It can see when energy is going to be at a lower cost or when a high cost event is coming, and it can modulate and adjust its output depending on the demand, on the energy price at the time. In addition to that, heat pumps can cool as well as heat. Not all heat pump systems can. It depends how you distribute the heat within the home. But if you hear the term air-to-air heat pump, that means rather than using traditional radiators, it's blowing air within the home. If you're using a blown air solution, then you can cool that home as well as heat that home, adding to comfort. And if you're in cooling mode, as part of that, there's a drain built into the fan coils, which will enable any excess moisture to exit the building, meaning it's having a dehumidification effect at the same time.
Perfect. And I think I'm probably not the only one to say that I didn't really know about this technology, to be honest, at all. How long has it been around for, and how long do you think that it's going to take to integrate to like a certain percentage of the homes within a social housing setting?
So it's been around for years. The first heat pump was developed, or air conditioning unit, which is the same technology effectively, was developed in the early 1900s. The thing people don't realise is you've already got heat pumps within your life. So if you've got a car with air conditioning, you've got a heat pump. If you've got a fridge or a freezer, you've got a heat pump. The technology is exactly the same. So it's been around for absolute years. If you look on commercial buildings, they've had air conditioning for years. I suspect most people watching this can't remember a time when air conditioning wasn't a thing in office buildings.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
It's tried and tested. And to put that principle into practice, if you took a fridge and you cut a hole in your kitchen wall, and you pushed the back of the fridge out of that hole, and you open the fridge door, you would cool your entire kitchen. It would slowly take the heat out of the kitchen and reject it out the back of the fridge. If you pulled the fridge back in, turned it around and pushed the front of the fridge out of the wall, so you had the back of the fridge sitting in your kitchen and left the door open, it would slowly heat the kitchen because it would capture the heat from outside and it would reject that heat through the heat exchanger on the back of the fridge and heat your kitchen. The principles, a heat pump is a little bit more advanced than that, but the fundamental principles are the same. So in answer to your question, they've been around since around the 1900s. It's not new technology. It's very common across Europe. It's just the UK are a little bit, well, quite a lot behind the curve when it comes to this.
Not surprisingly.
Absolutely.
But perfect. I mean, how does this technology sort of align with your values at Robert Heath? Because I know you work, well, if not solely within the public sector with housing associations, social housing and things like that.
Absolutely. So our roots are social housing. We're very passionate about what we do. We believe in a just transition to net zero carbon. So Robert Heath are very big on family values, which Daikin will refer to as people-centric leadership. But to my mind, it's one and the same thing. So we strongly believe in the capability of people, but also in the transition to net zero and supporting the environment for future generations. By effectively deploying this technology well, we know we can make a big difference, but we're looking at bigger picture. So we don't see ourselves just an installation business. A big part of our remit is around service and repair, because you can install the best technology in the world. If you're not maintaining it and ensuring it achieves its maximum life expectancy, there's a very strong argument you're not truly delivering net zero carbon. So for our values, it's around full product life cycle and making sure we're there to support our customers through that full product life cycle, not just fit and forget.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think it's been very insightful for me as well to find out about obviously all the new technologies, the solar PV and your heat pump technology also. And it's not just been invented, as I probably would have thought anyway, which I'm hoping some of the audience will understand as well. I guess that's it for today, Ian. Thank you for joining us on the People in Housing podcast. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing more what you do in the industry. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Anytime.
Really is an interesting take from Ian on the issues regarding energy efficiency and their mission to guide clients on the path to net zero. Moving on, we'll be with Ellana, who will be speaking to Richard from AirEx, who through their innovation of products may change the way we think about energy efficiency and the prevention of damp and mould.
Hello, Richard. Thank you for joining us today. It's been so nice to have all of you in the office. If you could just give us a bit more background about what yourself and AirEx do.
Sure. So I'm Richard Kemp-Harper. I'm Chief Commercial Officer at AirEx. I've been in sustainability for about 15 years and innovating new products in that world. For the last 10 or so, I was working in zero emission transport and trying to get efficient trucks and buses to reduce emissions on streets. And now I'm working with AirEx. I've been with AirEx for about a year and a half. And we're working in obviously the retrofit space, and we produce energy efficiency products to help reduce heat loss from domestic properties, particularly older properties. So our products work by reducing the heat loss from the floors that you get in a lot of older properties. Going back sort of 1945 backwards, Victorian terraces or 30s semis, those sorts of properties have suspended timber floors, and it's quite difficult to reduce heat loss from those. So we've got really simple products that you use just to replace the air bricks, and by effectively creating a warm air blanket under the floor, we reduce heat loss and reduce bills for residents. And because it's certified in SAP, it can give 2 to 5 EPC points for the housing associations or to try and reach their targets.
Perfect. And how does AirEx differ to traditional insulation?
Well, it's working in a very different way. So the heat loss from floors, you've kind of got two things going on. You've got heat going through the material of the floor.
Okay.
And then you've got ventilation of the space under the floor that's taking that heat away.
Yeah.
So traditional insulation works by stopping that heat transfer through the floor. So you put whatever the material is and reduces that heat flow through the floor. AirEx works by changing the way the ventilation happens, by controlling the ventilation.
Okay.
So the floors will all have air bricks that allow ventilation, but it's uncontrolled ventilation. So it's effectively air flowing through the whole time. And what AirEx does is it controls and manages that airflow. So you have ventilation when you need it, because you do need it for reducing the risk of damp under the floor. But we keep it closed the rest of the time, and we use external weather data to make the right choice about when to open and close. So that you make smart choices about when the vents are open and when they're closed, to keep heat in when you can, but ventilate when you need to. And it's kind of, if you think of what goes on in a home, you've got windows with trickle vents that are giving you background ventilation.
Okay.
It's all the time. I mean, it's a draft down the back of your neck if you're sitting in a chair and so on. And people kind of don't like them very much because it's just there all the time. It's uncontrolled.
Yeah.
Necessary, but uncontrolled. The other way of ventilating a home is to open the windows. And you can do that when you need to, and provide that purge of ventilation, rather than just having it open all the time. And it's more comfortable, it's a better way of managing it, but it does the same thing, because you're purging humidity or pollutants out of the home. And we're doing the same thing in the underfloor, if you like.
Yeah, okay, perfect. And what does AirEx installation look like, and what benefits does it have for residents?
So I guess that's one of the key things for us. We spend a lot of time working on making it as easy as possible to install. So actually, from a resident's point of view, almost all the work happens from outside. All we're doing is, or the installer is doing, is knocking out the bricks that are already there from outside and then mortaring in the new ones. And so for most homes, that can be done in an hour or an hour and a half. So it doesn't need to be on site for a long period of time. And it's mostly external. And the only thing that happens internally is 5 minutes. There's a home hub which connects the bricks to the internet so we can do all the smart stuff. And that's just a question of plugging that in and connecting it to Wi-Fi, or just making sure it's all in the right place. And that's the only time the installer needs to go in the home. So it's really quick and easy. And in terms of benefits, apart from that lack of disruption, it's reducing bills. I mean,
of course.
And floors, you often get drafts through the floors, and it's an area you feel, you have cold feet. and actually, by addressing that, it's got more benefit than the raw heat loss, just in terms of comfort.
Okay. Perfect. And how does AirEx work alongside with the retrofit measures?
So it's again, because it's nice and easy to install. It works really well. It doesn't take a lot of time. So while other things are going on a site with other retrofit measures going in, it can just be done at the same time or fit around other work. A lot of projects will do loft insulation or maybe cavity wall insulation. Okay, let's do the floor as well. It's a really simple thing that sits along there. And if you're doing more complex things like external wall insulation or internal wall insulation, you probably need to change what you're doing with ventilation and with the air bricks anyway. So fit us in around those. So it sits really well alongside other measures, just as a nice, easy thing to add to a project. And it's low cost compared to a lot of other things, and a small amount of labour. So it's really a nice thing to add to the mix. Yeah,
definitely. And I think AirEx is a smart, connected technology. What does that mean for social housing customers?
Yeah, so we're one of the few products around that does monitoring of what's going on in the home and then does something about it. So the smart technology is providing an intelligence to the way it operates. But then it's also giving us a stream of data about what the conditions are under the floor. So we've got something like 20,000 products installed so far in about 2,000 homes. And we've got, therefore, the biggest data set in the world of conditions in the underfloor. So we're getting a really good insight into what's going on in this space, which is poorly understood. And what we're able to do from that, and increasingly we're talking to housing associations about this, is provide insights into which properties might be at risk of things like damp and rot in the floor. So we can say, actually, these ones are all fine. And oh no, we've got 5 here that maybe you need to go and have a look at and inspect and see if there's a structural problem with the home before it gets too bad. So that risk reduction for homes, and just checking that what's under the floor, it's a healthy space, it's well ventilated, and there's nothing going wrong. That's really important to housing associations, because they, obviously care about their assets. Yeah,
definitely. I think there's a real chance there to collaborate with your risk assessors, your surveyors within the public sector, and sort of aid before it gets too late and save a bit on cost there as well.
It's all about saving maintenance costs. If you can find what's going on in a home without having to go and turn up on site, or direct your surveyors to go to the right properties that you need to go and look at. There's real value in that in terms of cost saving.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's probably key for the social housing industry at the moment, because there is a struggle, especially with the damp and mould, and it's so huge at the moment that I think it's a pretty smart way of sort of keeping track of the things that can happen within people's homes. So yeah, I mean, within AirEx, I mean, what are your long-term goals, and how many homes do you sort of plan to be in within the next few years?
Okay, so we're doing, at the moment, we're looking at around 400 a month of installations over the next few months. And we're very much hoping to ramp that up to be doing thousands a month. There's something like 8 million homes in the UK that have suspended timber floors and are suitable for our products. So we'd like to support as many of those. There's other routes to doing insulation in those things, so we won't get all of them, but there's a lot of those that we can help, particularly targeting people in fuel poverty and in social housing, as well as helping landlords reduce their carbon emissions and heating bills and so on. That's a key target. And we're also applying our approach as well as that core product. We're looking at doing room ventilation and monitoring in rooms as well. So that expertise that we're building in getting healthy floor voids, what can we do in terms of the healthy room space? So we're developing products and services as well that are looking at the room level and how can we sit alongside, how we can, all the work that people are doing to address condensation, damp and mold, and reduction of other pollutants in the home, good air quality, all that work that's going on, how can we be part of that and support that work too?
So definitely exciting to be obviously expanding your product range. I mean, as a direct cost saving to bills and things like that, how much do you think you can potentially save for a tenant?
Yeah, good question. So we did a big trial sponsored by Ofgem a few years ago, and we did more than 100 properties, and the average across that portfolio was a 12% heat loss reduction, so a bill saving of 10 or 12% potentially. Some homes are more, some homes are less, but the average was around that sort of number, so quite significant. And again, it's the comfort factor as much for residents. The floor is, your feet are there and getting cold. Actually having a warmer floor is actually more important, or it's not more important, but it's as important as reducing the bills.
Definitely. Well, I think that wraps it up. Thank you for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to have you, and I'm looking forward to see where you end up in the future.
Amazing to hear from Richard on the development of their ventilation solutions to reduce those bills and control airflow. We move on to Nigel from Comfort Frame, who hopes with his innovative installation product, housing associations and landlords will be open to collaborating and supporting the tenants in the future.
Hi Nigel, thank you for joining us today. Could you just give us a bit more background about yourself and what it is that Comfort Frame do?
Okay, so I've been in the construction industry now for over 40 years, and it was my fortune to come across some like-minded people in the industry who said that there is an opportunity out there to do something, and I went away and designed the Comfort Frame system. And the Comfort Frame system is basically a internal walling solution that reduces energy usage and reduces the bills, and that's the whole concept of what we try to do with the actual system. So it's been a long, hard journey, but we're kind of getting there now.
Perfect. And I mean, looking back over the past decade, what was it that inspired you to turn your head to wall insulation?
I think with the walling insulation, it's the one thing that can make the biggest difference on any properties that you come across. Certainly in the older properties where they're solid wall insulate, the solid wall construction, they are very cold, and you go into a lot of properties around the country, and you'll see that because they're cold, they do make a huge, it's a huge difference. And I think by putting an internal wall insulation, it does make a huge difference then.
Was there a certain challenge that made you realise that this innovation was necessary? Or
there certainly was. It's a small story, but we went to do an IWI installation on a particular block of flats, and the lady whose flat we was actually doing, she said she had a major issue in as much that she had a choice between eating or heating.
Oh gosh, yeah, it's awful.
And by the time that we actually were able to finish the job, she managed to not wear her coat to bed.
Oh, bless.
So it made a huge difference to me. And sometimes it's not about the money, it's about what you can actually do. And that made a big difference. And that's what keeps you going, really. Yeah,
definitely. I completely agree. And I think it's a shame that people are still living within those conditions.
They are.
I mean, obviously the aim of this podcast is to bring knowledge and insight to social housing industry. How exactly can your solution help the industry to fight existing challenges?
Well, as I say, the IWI will make the biggest difference to the residents and the tenants. and it will make the biggest difference to the net zero going forward. The difficulty that we have is to try and educate the housing associations to see how much of a difference it can make.
Yeah.
And it is substantial. You know, you're talking at least 45% of their bills can be taken off.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge.
And if you're taking off that and you're keeping the house warm, you're not going to have any issues with condensation either.
And I mean, what issues are you facing when you're trying to introduce your new technology at the moment? Are people receptive, or?
The problem we find is that change is always very difficult to get through, and it's a very conservative market with a small c, in as much that people don't understand the system, and if they don't understand it, they won't take it up, and they need to see proof that it works. So it is a long, slow process, but if you can do a few pilots for them and show them how much of a difference it does make, that's how long it takes. You know, that's how you would deliver it.
I think the proof in the pudding, really, it takes a few of the big housing associations to get on board, and then they all seem to follow.
Yes, that's the problem. But you know, there are a lot of other housing associations who are very forward thinking, and they're not particularly the bigger ones. They're the ones that go, we'll have a go.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that will feed back into the industry as to it's the right solution, and that's how it works.
Definitely. I mean, the journey of innovation can be lonely at times. Is there anything particularly that's kept you motivated?
It is very lonely and it's very hard. The thing that keeps you motivated is that you know that it can deliver. Another story is we did one in London where the lady, her son was going backwards and forwards to hospital with asthma problems.
Yeah.
She came out to us after we completed and said, my son hasn't got the asthma problems anymore.
Oh.
The air quality is that much better that he doesn't cough at night. And those are the things that keep you motivated. It's not the money, it's about what you can actually do for these people.
Yeah, and I mean, what makes you differentiate from the other technologies that are out there at the moment?
Because basically we have thought about it from end to end. It's taken, as I say, it's taken 10 years to develop the system up. And I've come from it from a building background rather than a material supply background.
Yeah.
So by knowing how you can build something quickly and easily, it's repeatable.
Yeah.
And that's the reason what makes us different from people doing it other ways.
Looking ahead, what role do you see collaboration playing in the future of construction innovation? Do you think a more open, cooperative approach could lead to faster and more widespread adoption of new technologies?
I certainly do. And my biggest gripe within the industry is that we should be looking at the whole house and how the whole house or the whole dwelling works, and doing what's best for that house. And that might not necessarily mean IWI, the whole, or internal wall insulation, but it's looking at doing the best for the insulation, the best for the heat recovery, and the best for the heat delivery. But do it as a whole solution. So you're pulling all the people together. And collaboration is the only way to go forward.
Of course, and it makes a lot of sense why we've all got you under one roof today.
But we've worked with Ian before and the like, and it is about bringing what they're good at and what we're good at, and delivering what's best for that particular property.
And having the maximum effect, really.
And also for the landlords to find out what's best value for money and what delivers the best results, and ultimately working like that, the tenant will get the best out of it.
Perfect. And I mean, finally, what advice would you give to other innovators on the importance of building strong partnerships and overcoming the barriers of entry in their respective industries?
I would say if you're innovating, you've got to have a lot of patience. And you've got to have the goal at the end of the day to know what that is. And as I said, once again, it might not be financial that you get your results. You might get it through your social the social betterment that you deliver. So it's well worth it, but be prepared, it's a long journey.
I can imagine. And I mean, obviously you've been in the industry for quite a long time already.
Yeah.
What are your plans going forward for the next
for the next
10, 15 years?
It is to work more cooperative with other people, but also I'd like to educate the industry a little bit better, to say, hey guys, you should be looking at this, because this may be a better approach.
Yeah.
And let's be fair, there are new products that are coming out that should be addressed and looked at and brought together in a situation like we're doing here, where we're trying to bring everybody together.
100%, I couldn't agree more. Thank you for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to have you all, and I hope to see you again.
Thank you.
Lovely to see and understand Nigel's passion behind his work. We'll be moving on to Pete from Mixergy, who will be talking on the development of their hot water storage solutions that focus on the homeowner's comfort, cost and carbon.
Thank you for joining us today, Pete. Obviously, last but not least, you're our final guest. So I just wanted to start off by, if you can tell us a bit about Mixergy and what you do.
Yeah, so Mixergy, we develop hot water storage solutions which save energy and try and get the best interaction between the home and the grid to make use of surplus renewables and lower the bills for the household.
Okay, perfect. And what's your main mission statement, would you say?
Yeah, well, it's to enable the decarbonisation of our housing stock without compromising on comfort, costs, and whilst reducing carbon. So 3 C's, really.
Perfect. And what would you say your sort of inspiration was for this particular technology?
Oh, that's a really good one. So at the time when we set Mixergy up, I actually had a flat with a small hot water tank which was using energy during peak hours relentlessly.
Oh, gosh.
And so it was from that point I realised how much energy is stored, how much it can cost, and looked into the design as part of my PhD, which I was doing at the time. And my friend and I, Ren, who set the business up with me, we thought this could actually be a solution for decarbonising homes, but also for helping more renewables get onto the grid.
Yeah. Perfect, and saving a bit of money on those bills.
That's it, yeah.
Okay, perfect. And I understand that you're working with Birmingham City Council at the moment. What energy savings have been made there so far?
Oh, so considerable energy savings across multiple high-rise blocks, so hundreds of thousands of kilowatt hours saved for end customers. So there are 2 ways in which the savings manifest themselves. So one is each hot water tank uses less energy because it's only heating what you need. A regular tank's like a big kettle. Heats everything, irrespective of how much hot water you actually need. These systems learn the usage profile, so they heat less and they just adapt to each householder's needs. So that saves a lot of energy. But then another saving is that they make use of the tariffs that are available to them. So a lot of these homes are on Economy 7 or Economy 10, and the price of electricity might be half what it is during the day at night. And so these systems automatically make sure that the heating happens at the lowest cost. So it can save hundreds of pounds for an individual dwelling a year, and cumulatively it's a decent amount of energy.
Okay, perfect. And can Mixergy be used in the social decarbonisation fund?
It can, yes. So all Mixergy tanks are heat pump ready, so they may be installed with a gas boiler today or with just direct electric standalone, but they can also work with a heat pump in the future without needing to change the hot water tank. They can go in with a heat pump from day one, and they can also work with solar PV, which gets them additional EPC points. So if you're a social housing landlord and you're trying to get to your EPCC target, it's quite a nice low-cost incremental measure which could work alongside an existing gas boiler, but also work with a future programmatic retrofit of heat pumps in mind.
Perfect. And I'd probably wonder what has the response been like with the social housing industry with your technology so far? Have you found it difficult trying to pitch your ideal technology to the organisations? Or
well, actually, it took us by surprise, I think, because we went in through the contractor route, who seemed really receptive to the technology because it looks to them like a conventional hot water tank. There are just a few other additional features which makes it connect to the internet. It reports the state of charge. And then it also reports to a platform that the social landlord can see, okay, how many of these tanks are working? Have they sterilised for Legionella? What's the average cost for each tenant? And so that kind of groundswell pushed it to the sort of the salience of the people who are making procurement decisions, and it kind of spread from there. So it's been really positive so far.
Yeah, and the procurement is your main stakeholders, really, aren't they? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I know. Makes sense.
I know all too well how dealing with procurement in social housing organisations can be sometimes. I mean, what is really the explanation behind the technology so that you've got the additional costing to a traditional water pump?
Yeah, so you're talking several £100 over and above a conventional hot water tank. Mm-hmm. But for that, you get additional controls and intelligence so that it works with whatever tariff the householder currently is on.
Yeah.
It means that the system's future-proofed for new tariffs that will pay to use surplus energy. So we've just launched with British Gas a Mixergy bolt-on tariff.
Yeah.
So that will pay the householder £40 a year. So it's great for fuel poverty. It reduces the bills. And then also each system is ready for a heat pump retrofit. So, if you're getting more efficiency out of a gas boiler up front with this, it will pay for itself in a few years. But then it's equally avoiding that extra capital cost of replacing the tank when you get a new heat pump in the future. So there are quite a number of different benefits that you can stack from a landlord's perspective for that cost.
Yeah, perfect. And I suppose the main question is, what's your plan really for the future and maybe different products? Have you thought that far ahead yet?
Oh yeah, so already we've launched our own integrated heat pump hot water cylinder, the IHP. So this is where you may have a hard to treat dwelling, it may have storage heaters, but you can get an EPC uplift with a hot water heat pump system. So that's been very popular. Also, a lot of work with Daikin. We've just announced a sales partnership with Daikin, and so we're working with their Altherma high temperature heat pump platform in such a way as to avoid needing so much ancillary equipment around the tank. So often you need a buffer vessel or a volumizer. We can get rid of that and put it all in one tank. And so that's another angle that we're developing with Daikin to improve what we can do under SDHF.
Perfect. Probably my question as well for you is, what's your sort of plan with Daikin going forward?
Oh, well, so we see Daikin as a real force in the UK now with the acquisition of Robert Heath.
Yeah.
Robert Heath has a huge amount of capability and capacity to do programmatic retrofits to a really high standard. And so that with the Daikin Altherma and the Mixergy system, we can get like a 20% improvement on the hot water heating. It's actually 24% uplift in the coefficient of performance, the COP. And so we want to extend that frontier moving forward by eliminating, as I said earlier, these additional bits of equipment, the buffer vessel, the volumizer, simplify the installation, take up less space in the cupboard, make it less invasive. Those are the things that we want to push on moving forward.
Definitely, and I've obviously saw the post about the partnership on LinkedIn, so it's very exciting things to come. I mean, how can smart hot water interacting with the energy grid save tenants money through tariff?
Yeah, so if you just step back 10 years ago, a third of our electricity was produced by coal. That's gone and it's all been replaced by wind. So what you have is when it's windy, most of the energy is coming from wind. When it's not windy, it's coming from gas. And so the price of electricity is going up and down depending upon how much renewable power there is. Sometimes it even goes negative. In other words, there's too much renewable generation on the system. And when that happens, it has to go somewhere. So increasingly what we're seeing are variable time of use tariffs. So that means the price is oscillating around. And sometimes electricity even goes lower than gas. I mean, today it's typically 2 or 3 times more expensive than gas. But occasionally it goes below gas or even negative. In other words, you're being paid.
Right.
And so as we move forward, the amount of wind that's on the system now is going to quadruple by 2030. And so that's going to lead to new tariffs that are going to be lower cost if you can use power at the right time. So by having a Mixergy tank with that intelligence, it's a great way of exploiting that opportunity moving forward.
Definitely. And it's probably an exciting time, isn't it, with this different technology? I think that was one of our main objectives through this podcast is I wasn't aware of any of the new technology out at the moment. So I think it will be good to get that really out there and to the wider social housing community, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a huge amount that you can do in terms of fuel poverty with quite simple interventions with connected products that can work with tariffs that only heat what you need. This sort of thing is really going to we think pay dividends and get you towards EPCC in a more efficient way.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's exciting times, and especially with you and obviously our other visitors we've had today, how you guys can all work together to really drive down the fuel poverty at the moment and make it a more sustainable environment.
Yeah, it's a constellation of measures you need. There's no one single solution. Home is a complicated thing. You've got glazing, heating, hot water, solar PV, getting off gas. It's a complex beast, and so it needs a collaborative effort.
Yeah, definitely, and I think it's exciting times. Thank you for joining us today, Pete. It's been a pleasure. And it's been great meeting you all today.
Likewise, nice to meet you. Cheers.
Amazing to hear from all of those innovators coming together to change the housing sector for the better, working a cohesive unit to change the way we perform retrofit. All of these technologies can work in unison to contribute towards the net zero future and prevent fuel poverty of the tenants that deserve to feel comfort in their own homes.